my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. I'm about to anger every single one of those content warnings, spoil the book, it's bad people, because I'm going to introduce the book, I'm going to give the book synopsis, and then I'm going to give so many content warnings that pretty much tells you how this book ends, and I don't care. So, today, I am reviewing Hematoma by Matteo Polk. This is not a romance, but rather an urban fantasy all about this young man named Shay who meets this tattoo artist named Ricky who, fun fact, is actually a vampire. Shay has some pretty big pain kinks. He's a very big masochist and has struggled to find anyone that can kind of match him for that. But Ricky seems like he can because Ricky is a sadist and enjoys it a lot. And again, this is not a romance. And that in itself probably spoils a bit for you. This is not a happy ending here. This is an abusive relationship. And before anyone gets annoyed that I literally tell you how the relationship ends, the author is on my side. We were talking, we were emailing back and forth, I was asking some clarification questions, and he flat out said, I know you're gonna have to spoil some things. And I said, I'm glad that you know that, because I'm going to do it regardless of whether or not the author knows. This is actually based on a toxic relationship the author had. So I do not think for a second that he would want anyone going into this book thinking, yes, this is good and healthy. This is also a little bit Own Voice's BDSM. I believe Matteo Polk is a pen name, so it gives us a little bit more freedom in talking about that kind of thing. But immediately I was intrigued by the idea of Own Voice's BDSM. However, this is not healthy BDSM. There is a lot of non-consent in things, and BDSM is very much like all about the consent. Both parties have to agree to what's going on. At the beginning of their relationship, there's not even a safe word, which even your average normie knows about what a safe word is. So it's not anything that you should ever duplicate in the real world. There's also things like gaslighting, toxic, controlling behavior. This just doesn't turn into a very good relationship. Now, that might have colored my thoughts early on in this book because, well, I immediately disliked Ricky. And, long-haired vampire is usually sexy, but in this case, I knew what he was going to become, so no. Shay is lovable, though he's all tatted and pierced up with bleached hair. He seems like a fun guy to hang around with, and he's not the biggest fan of his life, so cool, interesting vampire taking an interest in him is a big deal. There's also this society of vampires and vampire-adjacent humans who are trying to help Shay. Their whole thing is trying to, rein vampires in from being their worst selves, and they try to tell Shay, hey, dude's not good, people have been disappearing. Shay writes it off. Oh, it's just different ideologies, and Ricky has, of course, all sorts of excuses for it. And this book definitely has that sort of realistic frustration you get when you talk to someone that's in a relationship like that, where you're desperately trying to get through to them that what's going on isn't healthy, but they refuse to see it. I might have been in a similar relationship once. Not to this extent, thankfully, but I did get a little bit of the opposite lens looking through what it's like trying to talk to someone who refuses to admit the relationship isn't healthy. The sex scenes, of which there are a lot, are a very specific kind of kink. This is not light BDSM in any stretch of the word. Shay loves needles and burning sensations and piercings and tattoos and all of that. So, keep a mind when you go into it. I don't think there's one vanilla sex scene in the entire book. So, didn't really do much for me, not that kind of kinky, but it is definitely intriguing to see it. And I do not know the extent of what this is Own Voices. I do not want to say that, Shay's kinks are exactly Matteo's kinks, but it definitely gets intense. It is definitely more than, your average middle-aged soccer mom trying her hand at erotica type fiction. But I appreciated this in its blunt honesty and its very well triggering depiction of abuse, and Ricky does horrible things and definitely tries to control Shay, but uses like kind words. And I get so nervous if I don't know where you are. You have to tell me where you are, type of thing. And it's really sad. The ending is one of those, it's not immediately a happy note, but it's one of those where it's hopeful enough that you can see the characters getting to a happy place later down the line. Like, you're not going to see the bright smiling face at the end of this, metaphorically see, but you get the gist that it's moving towards that, which is probably one of my favorite kind of endings because it feels the most realistic. When you go through something intense like that, you're not magically going to be okay by the end unless, you have an epilogue that's like 5 years in the future. But I really appreciated how deep this book went. It was a slow read for me, which was strange, and that might have been just how dense the pages were, because my average reading speed is 1.5, and usually in erotica I can even up it a little bit, but for some reason this was super slow, almost a page a minute, which is like my speed for classics and like old English type books. And again, I get a PDF copy most of the time when it's an digital copy, so it might have just been super dense text on the page. And or sometimes you gotta make it as short as possible to make it as cheap to print as possible. I've talked to a lot of indie authors who talk about how anything over 200 pages, the price jumps up. So I could see that being a thing, but I wouldn't necessarily go into this one seeing the page count and automatically being like, oh yeah, it's a quick read. It's not a light read by any stretch of the imagination. It's not necessarily a read you want someone glancing over your shoulder and seeing you reading. I, for one, am very glad the little is at home right now so that I can talk about this freely. But it is still a very important book, I would say. And I, again, would caution anyone who's still healing from this kind of thing, go into it knowing what it is. It could be cathartic to see someone else go through it, or it could lead to a very bad mental place for you. I have no idea. But as for me, I've seen people talk about or comment the fact that they've bought and read books because I suggested them, so no way in hell was I going to talk about this book in all of its abusive darkness without giving a heads up. And if you're one of those people that thinks content warnings are annoying and spoil things, I don't care. I will ruin a book for 200 people to prevent 2 people from going to a bad place mentally. I don't care. So, with that in mind, if you want to get at me in the comments about content warnings and spoiling, you can feel free to try. I feel very strongly about this. No, never mind. So, anyway, if you are an indie author and you would like a review like this one, BTW, I gave it 5 stars. Please let me know. I will have my email and other information down in the description below. Still soft close, but I'm getting closer to opening, but be warned that a no might be more likely than usual. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.